Hey everyone, it's Daniel Elwood, and Robert Paul Johnson is my co-host, and we are the Last Nighters. You can find us on the lastnighters.com and also on the Liberty Movement's YouTube channel. We're going to be doing Law Abiding Citizen tonight, and this is episode 181 of the show. You can find the show notes more at lastnighters.com/181. We did a little bit of pre-show bonus content available for Patreon supporters. Go to lastnighters.com/Patreon for that. And we're going to be talking about this movie tonight, starring Gerard, Butler, and Jamie Foxx. With our buddy who was on, I want to say it was September of last year, for Gentlemen Broncos. Now, this movie apparently was a bit of a troll for for him to come on and talk about it. Gentlemen Broncos, that is. But the episode turned out actually pretty good. I think mostly because Robert, my co-host, wasn't there. But we had a good discussion, and then Robert came on and did a bonus discussion covering some of the things that he had wanted to say had he been on, only to lament that we had already said most of the things that he was going to say. So anyway, it was a lot of fun. And our guest is Ben. He otherwise is known as Dirty J. So welcome back to the show, Ben Dirty J.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming back on and being willing to join us yet again. I know that the first time through was a little bit rough. Robert shied away. He didn't want any part of it. I don't know if it was something he was offended by you or he didn't like the movie. I don't know. But I did coerce him into showing up tonight. So
that was probably me. I have that effect on people. Blame it.
So anyway, Ben, you were a listener of ours, and so you were throwing suggestions our way way back when, and that's why we did Gentlemen Broncos. And then, gosh, it's probably been 2-3 months ago, you suggested this movie, and I had booked us up probably in February up through about mid-June, and so I was like, well, that's a great suggestion. How about mid-June? So it's finally here. And I think this will be a good one. I like the premise of this movie, and not necessarily the execution, which we will get into a little bit. And I think you placed a bet early on that you thought Robert might give this a higher score than me. So we'll see how that one pans out as we get into this one. But how we start off is with the Google description. So while I'm doing that, actually, is there anything you want to plug or mention or give a little brief bio on yourself?
No, I mean, nothing I can think of. I mean, I think I gave a little bit of a bio last time I was on, and I'm not really involved in anything special at the moment to plug.
Other than being our guest, that's special enough.
other than being a faithful listener.
All right. Well, thank you. We need more of you. All right. So this is, of course, Law Abiding Citizen. Came out in 2009, directed by F. Gary Gray. He also directed Friday and Straight Outta Compton, among other films and music videos. The IMDb is 7.4 out of 10, 26% Rotten Tomatoes, 4.4 out of 5 on the old Voodoo, and 90% of Google users like it. And the description reads, Clyde Shelton, played by Gerard Butler, is an honorable family man until the day his wife and daughter are murdered in a home invasion. He hopes for justice, but a rising prosecutor named Nick Rice, played by Jamie Foxx, cuts a deal with one of the killers in exchange for testimony. 10 years later, that man is found dead, and Shelton coolly admits his guilt. Then he hands Rice an ultimatum. Fix the broken legal system or suffer the consequences. Came out October 16th, 2009. Directed F. Gary Gray, as I said earlier. Box office of $127.9 million. And Robert, I'll go to you for your opening salvo.
Yeah, that intro, or that description kind of makes it sound like Gerard Butler was asking Jamie Foxx himself personally to fix the entire legal system all by himself somehow, which I don't think is what Jerry Butler was trying to get him to do. I think what he was trying to get him to do was to behave in a more straightforward manner, to care more about justice and less about his, conviction rate. He was more interested in people acting upright and forthwith than in getting, working the angles and bureaucracies and this kind of crap. He was more interested in making a point to the judge, to Jamie Foxx, to everybody. He was trying to show everyone that this shit is fucked up and that human beings need to act along according to a moral code in that sense, as opposed to, following the rules of the law to the letter or whatnot, or even working within the system and getting like kickbacks and slap hands and, that kind of crap. It's a fun revenge story movie it's a kind of a, it's a not conventional revenge story. Like you're following Jerry Butler and at first you're rooting for him, and then he's crossing some lines and you're like, whoa, pump the brakes here, buddy. Like I want to root for you, but then I'm like, no, you've turned into a monster. And it's funny how the protagonist goes from being Jerry Butler to being Jamie Foxx at some point in the middle. And I guess that line might be different for every viewer. So when he initially kills the two murderers, I think most of the audience is on board, even though he kills them in a fairly gruesome way. People are still like, yeah, he's kind of acting with justice in mind there. But then when he goes on to kill all these other people, in the interest of just making a point, you're like, well, you're killing innocent people. I mean, you can debate on how innocent they are, but you're killing people, in a disproportionate level, right? Like they're probably guilty of some kind of crime, moral or ethical crime, but they don't deserve to be killed for it. And especially not to make your point, which is it's debatable on whether or not it even is going to have any kind of effect. I mean, maybe Jamie Foxx at the very end is like, okay, I'm going to be more of going after the bad guy no matter what kind of a person. And that's about it. That's the entire effect of the Jerry Butler's crusade, is to change one guy's opinion. And maybe he thinks that is a win for him. And maybe it is. I think that's up to every viewer as to whether that's a win for Jerry Butler or not. But I had a really good time with this film. I enjoyed the strategic aspects of it. You're messing with one very, very dedicated man that has absolutely nothing to lose, and who is super genius, and who has 10 years of time to prepare. Now, I think we could debate whether or not all this preparation time is really gonna be as effective as the movie portrays it. So Jerry Butler has 10 years to prepare, and he's thinking about all these possibilities of the effects of his plan, right? And so he's got all these pieces in place, right? And it kind of relies on, Jamie Foxx doing predictable things. So he goes to a house, and then there's a picture of the news clipping, and that was put there by Jerry Butler or whatever. And you're like, okay, maybe he's going to go there. Maybe he's going to see that. But maybe the character wouldn't have done that at all. Maybe if it's a real life person, they're not going to do that at all. And you would have to, what I'm trying to say is that Jerry Butler, despite him being super genius, he's not going to have all that information, all the changing information over time, that human beings change over time. And it's a real kind of, he's portrayed as this super genius when in effect, nobody's really that smart. So you really have to kind of go on a ride and kind of have some suspension of disbelief that this guy is just so smart and he's got everything in place perfectly, even though chances are, because everything goes right for him, right? Until the very, very end when Foxx finds his property with the secret passageway and stuff like that. Chances are a whole lot of more stuff is going to go wrong that he just can't foresee, because one human, even though you're a super genius, you're just not going to be able to foresee because all the moving parts. So,
Right.
and that's a thing of economics that we talk about a lot. But it's still a fun ride. I enjoyed the revenge angle, and then the revenge, turning into a monster, because he is just committed. He is a committed. But I enjoy the fact that he's a villain that has a relatable point of view taken to an extreme, and those are the best villains. So this was a lot of fun. I got a couple quibbles, but overall, man, I recommend this film. It's great.
All right, Ben. It looks like you were right that Robert does like this one, and probably liked it more than I did. And I actually enjoyed the film. And I wonder if, Ben, as a listener, you've probably heard Robert talk about he likes revenge movies.
This is
and
true.
He likes to have relatable characters, and you've got that in spades here. So maybe that's the tell. But yeah, I think that, Robert, to your point about him, there's no way that he could have planned this level of intricacy and this level of detail without something happening derailing those plans. And I think you're right. And I think your point is related to the concept of central planning. Now, normally, central planning is related to like somebody trying to plan an economy and not somebody making plans for their own property and what they plan to do. But even in that, you're always adapting. Entrepreneurs are always adapting to changing conditions and things like that. So even on the individual scale, there's really no way that you can plan out that level of detail. Maybe you can plan out like longer arcs, like I want to trend this direction and here's my goal, but it's going to be like a zigzaggy path getting there. And you're going to encounter obstacles and overcome them and kind of, change your plan a little bit, but still maintain the what your end goal, your end state is. But this one relies on everything going exactly, like even to the cell he gets confined in solitary, must be not occupied already. It must be the very one that he has selected with his property that he purchased across the street from that. So anyway, I think it's an interesting premise. And to your point about, what lesson is he really committing to here? I think at the end, it really is just convincing the one guy, but it almost starts off as he's putting the system on trial. Like the system is what the problem is. And at the end, it really doesn't seem like it's the system per se. Maybe the incentives in the system, the way he sees it, it lends itself to these lazy people who are focused more on the numbers and not on truly pursuing justice. So, trying to boost their stats and get, higher positions of power, gain notoriety, things like that. When really, as anarchists, and I speak for Robert and I'm pretty sure Dirty J, you are as well. We would prefer a legal system that is not monopolized, in that there would be what's the right term for it? It's a polycentric law. So it would be, arbitration and third parties making decisions and judgments based on their track record of doing good work in that and specializing in those things, versus this sort of machinery type system that exists now, where they just procedurally go through these steps almost in a rote fashion, totally divesting from the intent behind them. And of course, they overstep all these supposed protections constantly, all the time. And we see that example when she signs off on this warrant that's clearly not legal. But she's like, well, I'm willing to take a flyer on it. And then he kills her with the cell phone gun, which that was, I think, the turn, right? That was when Jerry goes from being the sympathetic, wronged guy to being the stone cold monster. At least for me.
Really? So you were okay with him killing the attorney?
Well, so yeah, okay. The guy was a sleaze.
You tell me, man.
The guy was a sleaze, and it was sort of it was like a one of those dominance things, like you will respect my timeline or there will be consequences. So it was like a lesson for them in dealing with him, negotiating style. But yeah, he was a bad guy there. Okay. Yeah, I'll give you that. Dirty J, you want to jump in on this, on anything we've discussed so far, or what was the thing about this that was like, all right, here's why I want to do this?
Well, first of all, the reason I love this movie so much is the description doesn't really give it justice. The way I see it is this movie is a live action depiction of every dude's ultimate revenge fantasy. I mean, when you think about it, how many times have you thought of yourself in a hypothetical situation, like you see somebody getting wronged, like somebody murders their kid or something, and then you see it actually happen on the news, and you're like, oh, if I was that dad, I'd kidnap that guy and torture him to death, and things like that. I mean, we've all probably thought of ourselves in those hypothetical situations, and this movie is basically
speak for yourself, buddy.
Well, I'm okay, maybe not then. I don't know. I mean, it just seems like a normal thing to people think about, but
this movie was basically from any allegations here.
Fair enough. But this movie is basically a live action depiction of that in the best case scenario. Because I mean, any of us, if we were in that situation, we wouldn't have the resources, the knowledge, and the skill to do what he did. So, like, that's why the movie's so far-fetched, I think. I mean, yeah, nobody's that smart, knowledgeable, and has that much foresight to make all this stuff happen and have it go perfectly without a hitch, of course, all the way up until the end where they find the bomb and they put it under his bed and, to teach him a lesson. But, yeah, I mean, that's why I liked it. I mean, yeah, like I said, the movie's far-fetched. There's some suspension of disbelief and everything, but I just love the premise of it. Like, this guy just goes and destroys. Now, of course, yeah, there is a point where he does go too far. Back when I first saw it, I wasn't libertarian minded or anything. I was just like cheering this guy on the whole way, and I didn't even see him as a villain. I kind of still don't, actually. Totally. But yeah, at some point he does go too far, because obviously when you're wronged, you're I guess entitled to getting basically when somebody does wrong in you, you are justified in getting compensated however you see fit, like justice, like seeking justice however you see it. You know what I'm saying? And that's something that the legal system doesn't do currently. The legal system just it's more focused on punishing criminals than it is dishing out actual justice, because in most situations these days, yes, criminals are going to be punished, but there's no justice. There's no some kind of closure for the actual victims in most cases. So that's kind of why I feel like Gerard Butler did what he did in this case. It's like, yeah, the criminal was punished. The one guy got death row. The other guy served the state mandated, 10, how long was he in prison? Like 6 years or something like that. It wasn't very long because of the whole plea deal. Now, to the state, that's justice. Applied, it was not. Right. And so I think up until what he did to the two people, what he did to those guys, completely justified. Like, I don't think anybody would argue that. Like, however he wanted to deal with that situation, those two guys being the one that aggressed upon him and ruined his life, and I think he was justified.
I think there is a little bit of a difference in the culpability of the two criminals, though, and they sort of play this up where the one who actually did the more egregious acts was the one who turned witness against the other guy and got that guy on death row, when he just seemed to be in on the home invasion end of it. And then when it went beyond that, he's like, whoa. So he wasn't really there for the raping and the murdering and all that. Granted, he was present during the committing of a felony, so I don't have too much sympathy for him, but it definitely was the other guy who was the more egregious actor, and he's the one who, in that view, would have deserved the more severe punishment. And the injustice in that was that because he was willing to turn against the guy and the state complied with or offered him a deal, that's what pissed Clyde off.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Now, it's see, I feel like, I mean, in a way, the way he did get his revenge on the two attackers. I mean, the one guy, he swapped out the chemical, and he did die a horrible death, but it was over in a matter of a couple of minutes. But what he did to Darby in the warehouse, I'm sure that was way worse.
Yeah, this is
Despite how
adrenaline.
bad they made the
yeah, adrenaline. So you don't pass out.
Yeah, despite how bad they made the injection chair look in the beginning, like I think that didn't hold a candle to what he did to Darby at all. So I feel like there's some, even in his own vision of what justice is for the people that wronged him, I think he did dole it out rather equitably. You know, he gave the guy that didn't commit the actual horrible crimes, he let him get off light comparatively.
Right, though not as light as he otherwise might have. I mean, he was still being put to death, but he just threw like a 2 minutes of suffering in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found it kind of interesting that they investigated that like it was. I mean, I get it, like that wasn't supposed to be what was to happen, so they'd want to look into it. But as like a viewer, you're like, well, they were killing the guy anyway.
Right. But it is messing with their system, and that's something they don't tolerate, right? Somebody has tampered with this, so they probably should investigate something. Maybe if it had happened in some other movie, they would have just been like, he's dead. Case closed. But in this film...
Yeah, well, in this film, Clyde also made very sure to leave some evidence with that little catchphrase, you can't fight fate. He left that at the scene of the crime. So maybe if that weren't there, then maybe they would have been like, oh, well, got some chemical wrong, but oh well, he's dead. But since they found that there's a little breadcrumb that led them where he wanted them to go. So
yeah, he wanted to have them go after Darby, and then he could get Darby to do the escape thing, and then he wanted Darby to get found, dismembered. Like all of these wheels had been turning for a long, long time to get this all to go into motion. And it's revealed, partway through that this guy is actually like an elite government agent. And maybe that's when he becomes the bad guy.
Yeah, really. He's like a CIA killer. He's probably been a bad guy the whole time.
Yeah, but it makes me kind of like wonder, if he's this badass killer guy, what's he doing having a wife and a kid? I mean, isn't that like one of those things that one would think you don't want to have any attachments if you're going to be in that elite level? And also, you wouldn't just like open your front door and get bashed in the head by a baseball bat?
You'd think so.
Yeah, maybe not.
Did they say he was retired, or that there was something he did formerly, or did they mention him still being actively part of that? I can't remember. I feel like that would have. So like he used to be this guy.
Yeah, it was probably past tensey. Yeah,
maybe.
I think so. I can't imagine that he was still doing that for the 10 years. They said that he had a bunch of patents and that he was moderately wealthy as a result of that, and had bought all of this property under various corporations and entities in other countries and jurisdictions. That made it very difficult for them to do the paper trail and find his property. That pissed me off. But that you even have to do all this paperwork and filing and divulging of information so that they can, paper trail somebody. Like it should be nobody's fucking business. And they, they try to do this like workaround thing by getting somebody to sort of cheat the rules a little bit and give up the, what was it, the expense account and the dollar amounts spent in the expense account. Like you're going to buy a fucking building on an expense account. That seems a little like, oh yes, I had a business lunch and I bought a warehouse.
Yeah. Hey, you never know.
Now, Daniel, what did you think about Gerard Butler's point in this movie? Did you think he had a really solid point up until the point at which he was, killing a whole bunch of people? But did you think that, Jamie Foxx should have not made a deal? And that, Jamie Foxx's idea is that, some better than no justice. And he's a competent lawyer guy and he knows the system and he's going to make a deal in order to get some kind of conviction. Whereas Butler's idea is, no. We go after them honestly and straightforwardly. And if we get the conviction, great. And if we don't, then we tried.
Yeah. I think to that point, he did want the seeking of justice to take the paramount importance versus the let's do a layup. Let's play it safe and make sure that our numbers are good. Let's make sure we get something over nothing. Whereas he's like, no, I've been ultimately wronged. My child and my wife were murdered by two men who attacked and stabbed me. I mean, and I know who they are, so it's like, it's not like it's some mystery who committed these acts. He knows who they are. And so I can see knowing that information and knowing that this guy is going to look for his numbers over actually going after them and, as ferociously as possible within the confines of a monopolized legal system, which has all sorts of flaws. It's a matter of strategy, I would imagine. And because he was, well, it's not like he's the client, right?
It's funny because Gerard Butler's the master of strategy, but in this case, he doesn't appreciate Jamie Foxx's strategy.
Right. But it's also not like Gerard Butler's necessarily the client here, right? Like it's the state versus
the guys.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not like Jamie Foxx is hired by Gerard Butler and thus acts in a capacity to carry out his wishes. Like what do you call that? A fiduciary? No, not a fiduciary, but like there's an obligation to carry out your wishes of the client. There's a relationship, some term about that. Fuck, I'm an idiot. But it is not that relationship. It is merely an advisory capacity, perhaps, that he's even talking to Jerry 300 about this thing.
Right. So in your mind, you were okay with both of their actions, right?
Jamie Foxx doing the deal.
Yeah.
Well, because as an audience member, I know that Darby's the dirty one, and I know that, but Jamie Foxx doesn't know that, right? So
he probably knows it. Like you said, it's not what you know; it's what you can prove.
Right. I mean, yeah, it makes sense, but I also like the idea of, you're going to go for it. You got to like lay it all out there, especially it's something that important. And that's the other thing that's sort of, there's a disparity in the subjective value of this whole situation. Who's been affected more? Has the state been affected more, or has Jerry been affected more? Obviously Jerry has. The state is just like kind of going through the motions. Oh, we got to show that we have a society here that's built on law and order, and there's consequences for bad behavior. And we want to get our conviction rate up so that our guys can get promoted and shit like that.
It's interesting because this kind of thing happens all the time. This, charging somebody with a lesser crime that you can prove, that they're guilty of, kind of like convicting Al Capone of tax evasion or whatever. Even though he's committed all kinds of murders and whatnot, but you can't prove those ones. So like with the Derek Chauvin trial, there was a lot of concern among people that he was being charged with like second-degree murder and third-degree murder, when it's like the standards of meeting those requirements were very, very high. So you're like, well, we're not going to get any kind of justice. He's going to get let off on those. Absolutely. So there's a lot of inclination to charge him with a lesser crime to get some justice as opposed to no justice. Even though not to get into that trial, but this kind of thing happens constantly in the legal system. They don't go for justice. They just try to get some kind of charge on people, get them into the system. It is really kind of perverse. And you're right, Dirty J. It's not about justice for the aggrieved. It's about punishing the criminal, but it's like barely punishing the criminal. It's like, get them on the most likely charge we can get a conviction on. That's what we'll go for, even if we think they're really guilty of these other things too, or this other thing too.
Right. And then the punishment is put them into prison university. where he can learn to be a better criminal, because he's going to get out in 5 years and be a bigger piece of shit. But to your point, Robert, where they're doing this undercharging so that they can focus on what they can prove or what they can actually get to stick, I think that's for the subset, the very minority of cases that actually go to trial, versus the other end of the spectrum, the flip side of that coin, where they layer and layer and layer on charges, trumped up, it doesn't matter. They just put a stack of them on you and go, all right, I can make half of this go away if you sign this plea deal.
Yep.
And they get all sorts of people not even getting a trial.
Yeah, the vast majority of cases are plead away. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, and a lot of these tactics, like the one where you just mentioned, where stacking all these charges one on top of the other, getting people to sign plea deals, all these tactics they use are more than enough by themselves an argument for a more privatized legal system, among a lot of other things. And back on the whole thing of whether Gerard Clyde was had good intentions for what he was doing. Looking at it more through the lens of an ANCAP libertarian, it seems he wanted to do basically what I guess you could compare him to like modern Republicans in that regard. He wanted to fix this system. He wanted to keep the system, but he wanted to fix it. Whereas all you're doing is you're just keeping this power structure, this system intact, and there's nothing you can do to fix it. He wasn't looking at it through like we need to just pull the rug out from under the whole thing. No, he was looking at it like, I can fix this. Now, if they would have went further with this movie and showed, well, they did show a little bit of what happened afterwards. They showed Jamie Foxx, Nick. He was at his daughter's piano recital and everything, but it didn't show really whether or not anything was fixed, which it couldn't have been. Because I mean, when you think about it, it's here's what would have happened in reality. Like, say this actually happened today. Some dude did all the stuff that Clyde did, and even if he succeeded in like blowing up City Hall and everything at the end, like everything went perfectly smooth. That wouldn't fix the system. That would actually do the opposite. It would continue the system, but there would just be more measures put in place that would be a burden on the rest of us.
Yeah, it would empower the system even more so because it's been attacked.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like look what happened with the January 6th insurrection. Where a bunch of freaking like trailer park people went in and kicked their feet up on some desks and then left, and then Congress reconvened that same night. But it was an unarmed people, by the way. But then now they're talking about making a January 6th commission and all that other stuff. It's like, oh well, yeah, or talking about putting more legislation out there that's going to further infringe on us.
Yeah,
because we got to protect this institution and everything from stuff like that. So that's realistically what I think happened post what Gerard or Clyde did in the movie.
Yeah, I think
I don't think really. I think maybe Jamie Foxx maybe personally might have learned something from that, but that's about it.
Yeah, Jamie Foxx had like a moment of personal growth. Like, okay, I'm not gonna just like do these layups anymore. I'm actually gonna go for justice as I can, and on top of that, I'm also gonna be there for my family.
Yeah, that's really about all he took away from it. But everything else, they didn't show what happened. But I imagine there was a lot of legislation passed after that.
Well, I think that 300's point wasn't necessarily to change the structure of the system itself, but how the actors within it perceive it and approach it and utilize it.
Right.
Yeah.
He's also one thing I like about the Jerry Butler character. I mean, he's not a perfect character, which I'm glad he's not. Well, good protagonists are never like perfect characters one way or the other. They're complex. And this guy, he's a bit conflicted because on the one hand, he's very principled, and he's like, no, we seek justice. This is what we do. This is the principle of justice. Jamie Foxx, you got to be just a laser arrow right on, targeted in on justice, and you got to be a straight shooter, and you got to do what you say, and be a straight, right, correct dealer, right? But then on the other hand, he's a very pragmatic, ends justify the means guy. Like, he's just murdering people that never did anything to him, destroying property that, he doesn't own, that isn't owned by anybody that did anything to him. He's a little bit, he's just like he's contradicting himself in that sense, right? Like, he's creating injustice. And that's one line in the movie, I think, that Jamie Foxx makes, that he's becoming, the thing that they're fighting, or he's doing the things that you're creating, you're killing people, and that's what happened to your family. That's what made you upset. You're just creating more of yourselves, more angry, sad, aggrieved people that now have a right to seek justice against you now. And in some sense, he's like, yeah, they have every right to seek justice against me. That's what they should be upset about. Like the one court scene where he's like dressing down the judge.
I love that one.
She was like, oh yeah. There's no prior charges. Maybe we should let this guy go. And he's like, are you kidding me? I'm on charge for murdering 2 people. You're just gonna let me walk out of here because I said some magic words? What?
Yeah, though I felt his points were actually pretty good. I don't know if there's anything to the case that he mentioned, but yeah, they did not have any direct evidence.
Right.
And you do have rights. You are presumed innocent until proven otherwise, in theory, though I don't know if that is in practice these days. But
right, and they were just playing into his hands to putting him in jail, which is exactly where he wanted to be. Which is like one of my favorite lines in the movie was, we convinced the other guy he's making all the right moves. That's the brilliant tactician that he is.
The Sun Tzu. They're
playing right into your hands by doing everything you expect them to do. So yeah, I really appreciated that he had the foresight, even though it's fairly unrealistic for him to be able to predict all their whatevers, but you can look at a system and go, okay, they're going to probably lock me up in this jail. And then if I kill my cellmate, they're probably going to be locking me up in solitary because I can't be trusted around people. And I think, didn't he have a tunnel that was tunneled to all the solitary cells? Isn't that right? Did I miss? Is that right about that?
I think there was one big tunnel, and then it led. There was like a ladder leading up to each of the individual cells or something like that.
Okay. All right. So it didn't matter which one he was in then.
But they did need to put him into some solitary cell though. But he was pretty much sure that he could, by stabbing some rando dude, that, they're going to throw him down there. And that relies on them doing that. If they didn't, then the whole plot of the movie is thrown into whatever. If they just decide to keep him there, or if they transfer him to another prison, which happens all the time.
Some of these things we have to forgive, like they had to script a movie and shoot a movie, so they can't oh damn, he got sent to another prison. I guess the movie's over. Pack it up.
Honestly, I'm looking at myself in that situation, and even assuming I had some of his skills and abilities and everything, the movie, if I was in it, it might have ended at that court scene, except I wouldn't have sat there and told the judge like, are you kidding? You're just gonna let me go out? I'd just been like, yeah, just let me go. I wouldn't have done the whole thing where I kidnap the other lawyer and leave him in a little, bury him alive with oxygen. I would have just been like, yeah, I'll give you a confession in exchange for something stupid like a bet or something, and then go to my court case, and they're like, oh yeah, he promised a confession. Well, did he give it? No. Well, then we have no choice but to let him go. And I just walk out and just give him a nod like, what's up, bud? Peace. And that would have been the end of the movie for me, because at that point I'd already gotten revenge on the 2 actual people that I had a gripe with.
Right, and you would have realized the futility in whatever plan he had and its ability to affect change.
Well, yeah, that too. And but I mean, also, how actually guilty could you consider everybody else in that whole system? Like the lawyer that was representing Darby names or whatever. I mean, was he kind of a scumbag? Yeah. I mean, the judge too. Yeah, they're all complicit in what happened, but are they really directly guilty of the bad shit that happened to him personally? Like, no, not really. Like, and if there's one person, even if you do kind of feel that he was justified in killing like the judge and the lawyer for the Darby's lawyer and everything, even if you feel those are justified, you got to at least look at what was her name? That little blonde chick.
The research assistant lady.
Yes, Sarah. She wasn't even in the movie in the beginning. So back when that happened, she was probably still in like high school or just going into law school or something. Now, fast forward, she ends up blowing up in her car because of Gerard Butler's.
Yeah, at one point she tells everyone she's 35 and that she gave up her family life for her career life. So yeah, she was 25 when it all happened.
Okay, yeah, so she still very well could have been in law school still. Then probably not even.
I think she's in an early scene there where he vouches for her, says, "Why don't you let her handle this?" And the lead prosecutor is like, "Well, if she fucks it up, it's your ass."
Okay, so she was there.
What was that? That was before the whole 10 years.
That's just when she was like researching, right?
Right. Yeah, that was the early on scene. That was the 10 years prior. She wasn't necessarily related to the Darby case, but she was like on his team.
Oh, okay.
Well, he's just killing people.
I just didn't remember seeing her at all in that early part.
She was 10 years younger. Yeah, hard to recognize her.
Yeah. I mean, out of all those people, she was clearly the least guilty of anything. So, I mean, even the most hardcore person who's like, yeah, kill them all. They got to look at that and be like, yeesh, come on, man.
Well, he blew up like 5 or 6 cars and kill 5 or 6 people in that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's
some characters we didn't even get to meet really. And then the other older prosecutor guy or whatever at the funeral. I don't know. I mean, there's a whole lot of murder, but let's talk about a scene that kind of translates well to what's going on today.
I'm down.
At one point, the mayor of Philadelphia institutes a citywide lockdown wherein nobody can move around unrestricted, as if a mayor of a city has that kind of power because some guy is killing a specific number of people. She's going to lock down an entire city of millions of people. What is she going to do? Call in like the National Guard and like make sure people don't leave their homes? And just never mind the horrific tyrant immorality of all that. And then just claiming that power.
Well,
we saw it with the governors.
Yeah. Well, we also saw it in Boston with the Boston Marathon bombing. They did that as well.
There was a citywide lockdown in the Boston Marathon?
At least a big portion of the city, yeah. When they were looking for the guys. I
remember when they were going house to house. I remember that. And like a lot of people were told to stay indoors. I don't remember that it was like an enforced thing. Like if you walked outside, there was going to be some cop telling you, get back inside or else.
Well, I think when it comes to mayors and stuff, I mean, I could be wrong, but maybe there is something to that position where there's like emergency powers that they can only enact in the case of, well, an emergency, like you said with the Boston Marathon bombing. There might have been a lockdown with that. And the movie, even though it's fictitious, I mean, it could have been based on some kind of reality.
They were saying
I did not make that parallel with the modern lockdowns with COVID and everything. It's like where are they getting that authority now? So I mean, they have it. They're making these lockdowns, and yeah, exactly. That's a good point. I did not make that connection.
Well, you guys know I'm an anarchist, and at best, the mayor would be like some sort of honorary title or something, maybe. And at best, they could offer a suggestion that, hey, there's a guy running around killing people. Maybe be a little extra precautious. Maybe stay indoors if you want. That seems like to be the prudent thing to keep your family safe.
Yeah, just
instead of just like having armed troops patrol the streets, making sure people don't leave their houses.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that's likening it to modern day. Yeah, they should just be disseminating the unbiased, unvarnished data and information rather than crafting it in such a way to make it the most scary thing ever, using fear to get compliance.
Yeah,
which seems to be what they're doing.
Yeah, just like put the situation out there and let the grown, critically thinking populace make their own decisions and assume whatever risks they want, which they could have done in this movie. I guess they could have been like, "Hey, there's a maniac that's kind of holding our city hostage. He's killing a bunch of people. He's got some axe to grind with us. So we recommend you take precautions and stay inside if you can, but we're not going to force you to do that or anything. I mean, if you want to, go out and about, do whatever, same thing. That's kind of what they should have done with the whole COVID thing. Like, there's this virus, it's got a 99% survival rate. Wear masks or don't. Private businesses, do whatever. Just everybody do whatever. Take whatever risks you want.
Well, it just shows that they think we're all idiots.
And it shows that they think that they're more important than we are. Also, this is a guy who's specifically targeting government actors.
Yeah,
and they're like, oh, they're targeting the gods. So clearly, everybody else is at massive risk too. He could kill one of us, then he's probably going to kill everybody or something like that. It's like, no, he's targeting a specific group of people for a very specific reason. And to equate that to a risk to millions of Philadelphians is ludicrous.
Yeah, that is a bit of a disconnect in this movie because they make it sound like the citizens are afraid and they need to be shown that they're still in charge, that the city hall is still in charge. But yeah, it doesn't make sense that the population would be freaking out about this because it's not as if 300 was going around doing these random acts that make a threat to your average person.
Right.
I mean, at best, maybe an unrelated civilian might have been, could potentially have been caught in the crossfire, mainly in the situation at the cemetery with the 50 cal and the bomb disposal unit. I mean, yeah, it was stray bullets. You got to think about that, stray bullets. And then,
for sure.
And then at the end, when he was about to blow up City Hall, well, I mean, I'm sure that would have affected more than a few completely innocent, unrelated bystanders had he actually done that.
Yeah,
right. But prior to that, though, all his stuff was targeted, like the phone gun and the one guy that he had buried alive and everything. That was no real danger to anybody else.
Right, well, but those people do have families, and they are affected, even if they aren't government actors themselves. They are being affected by this violence for sure.
Oh yeah.
All right.
So any other notes before we start getting into some summaries here?
I'm just curious when the flipping point was for each of you guys. It sounds like Dirty J was fine with the first two, but then anything after that, now you've turned into the villain, even though I understand you. Is that about correct, Dirty?
Yeah, I mean, part of me, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I still would have hated everybody that had something to do with my case, and I might have wanted to kill him at some point, but I'll be like, yeah, it just wouldn't feel right to me. Just getting revenge on the two guys, even though it took me about a decade to get it. I finally got revenge on the two guys. My justice on the guys that ruined my life, and I'm cool with it as long as I can get out of it scot free. Like, just waltz out of the courtroom and not insult the judge. Man, yeah, I'd be golden.
Yeah, Daniel, where are you at?
Well, almost to the point of the lawyer who was a sleazeball and obviously knew that his client was guilty, but he has a responsibility to represent his client as best as he can and make that deal to get him off after the 5 or 6 years that he spent in the joint. And I wonder if that scenario, which was, as I was mentioning earlier, like a power play in his negotiations with Jamie Foxx and the warden, like, hey, you better be timely because there are going to be consequences. Now, they did not know what those consequences were, but he said, you better be on time. And this was, to prove a point that he's not to be fucked around with. But also, I think maybe in his mind, it sort of absolves him a little bit of the death because he gave them an opportunity. Granted, they weren't aware of the nature of the opportunity and the timeline. Like there wasn't a connection of, hey, you need to be timely, and here's why. But in a way that maybe like transfers some of that guilt he might have felt otherwise to them in some way. But he's also this stone cold government killer, so he, it's probably doesn't matter to him as a character. But yeah, I'm kind of okay with the first two, though the gruesome death of the guy who was like in on the home invasion. I don't know if he should have had the death row thing to begin with. Certainly the Darby guy was more culpable and more like of an irredeemable guy who's obviously gonna do worse shit going forward and would be a threat to be out amongst other people. So, but dismembering him and keeping him alive throughout the process, that oversteps for me a bit. I mean, he did do horrendous things to to Sparta's wife and kid. So I don't know, man. It's a tough one.
It's hard to put yourself in his shoes.
You want that fucker to suffer.
How would I feel if you don't really know until that actually happens to you, obviously.
Right. And I don't even know if like watching this guy suffer, like even if he kept him alive for, hours and hours of torturing him. Okay. Is that cathartic? I mean, what have you accomplished really? Do you feel better about that? I don't know. Or do you feel like a fucking monster?
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
I guess it's based on the individual. Because I mean, apparently that was what he saw as justice, and I mean, I kind of agree with how he carried out his justice. I mean, some people might have been too harsh. I'm just looking at it. I'm like, that's pretty spot on. I mean, I don't feel the least bit sorry for either of these two. Like what he did was just perfect. Yeah, beyond that though, killing all these other lawyers and the young blonde women that had nothing to do with anything. That's just like, yeah.
I did like
you stepped over the line.
I did like the premise or the idea that he was accomplishing all this while behind bars. But then it's kind of revealed that he's got the secret tunnels and he can get out and do stuff and then miraculously get back in time where they never know he was gone. So it's like the guards watching his cell must have been the Epstein guards. The cameras must not have worked, whatever, malfunction, both of them.
So the darkest solitary cell. I mean, not even a light.
But while you're watching the movie, it's almost as if he's pre-planned these things to happen on like dead man switches. Like he doesn't need to do anything. And that premise I thought was cool. Like, okay, I'm in here and I'm obviously not doing this, right, guys? And all of it's happening because he's so perfectly planned it. But no, he was sneaking out and doing it. So
at least he was sneaking out after he got put into solitary, that stuff. But the dead man switch on the lawyer, that was all pre-planned, right?
Yeah,
because he had already kidnapped the guy and did the stuff.
And that was part of the charm for the movie. Like the first time watching it, your first time watching this movie, you're like, how is he doing this? And that's why I love this movie so much, because there are other movies that do this that I have only watched once, and I don't care to watch again. Like an example is that movie that does something similar. It's that one quirky horror movie, Cabin in the Woods. You guys seen that one, right?
Yeah. Once
you know,
it's like, okay.
Yeah, like once it's like, okay, like that was most of the charm of the movie. I literally have only seen that movie once. Don't care to watch it again. Law Abiding Citizen, I've seen it, I don't know how many times, and that's because despite the fact that I know, I just love this movie. I love the theme of it. I just, yeah, like I can't, I like, even though I know what's going to happen, it doesn't ruin it for me. I'm just watching it like, yeah, come on. Yeah.
Yeah, you like that revenge aspect, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, what was the
Yeah,
movie we did, Robert, that was a Korean revenge film?
Well, I saw The Devil.
Yeah, I think that's the one I'm thinking of. Have you seen that one, Ben?
No,
All
You
right,
might want to check
one
that out. That's a fantastic film.
I saw The Devil.
I
Yeah.
saw The Devil.
Okay.
It's good. That's another. It's similar in the vein. Like a serial killer kills the girlfriend of a guy who's got a certain set of skills,
Oh boy.
and he takes some serious revenge. And it's very, very slow and planned out, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and Robert's not
Very
one
intense.
for subtitled movies, but he likes that one.
I like there's a couple of really talented South Korean directors that make some really fun stuff.
Yeah, and we did that one, gosh, probably 3 or 4 years ago. So the audio quality won't be as pristine and dulcet as as it is now.
So sweet.
But you can give it a listen.
Yes.
I will. I'll probably try to find the movie first, and then I'll listen to that episode. I don't want any spoilers.
Yeah, check it out. Check it out. Check it out.
All right. Well, we'll put that on the old show notes page, lastnight.com/181. And also, we might do a little Kathleen Turner overdrive after this so people can hit up our Patreon, go to lastnight.com/Patreon for a little bit of that. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to mention is we got a review a while ago, and I didn't read it anytime. So it's from a while ago, but do you guys mind if I read it now?
Daniel, you do you, buddy.
All right. 5-star review. Give these gents a try. This is an entertaining and insightful podcast. Listeners get to hang out with two knowledgeable yet unpretentious libertarian hosts and their intriguing guests. Putting concepts through the lens of movies helps to contextualize them in an entertaining way. End quote. So, a pretty decent review. Thank you for that. DD90, I think, was how that was signed off. DDE90. So thank you for the review. And if you too want to give us a review, go on to Apple Podcasts or wherever reviews are sold and give us one. And I will try to read it, within the 2 or 3 months after you've made the review, like I did on this one, because I'm lazy.
So good.
And so slow.
So good.
All right. Speaking of reviews, why don't we give this thing a score? Should we give it car bombs or dismembered body parts?
Exploding cell phones.
Exploding cell phones. Okay. All right. So, Dirty J, you want to lead us off with your final summary and review? I know you're going to give it a lot of exploding cell phones. You've kind of already tipped your hand, but
yeah, I did. No, nothing's really changed. Even us picking this movie apart, I still really love this movie. I'm definitely going to watch it again, despite the fact that the storyline's a little bit far-fetched. Yeah, I mean, once again, it's not going to be the perfect movie. No movie really is. But out of 10 exploding cell phones, I'm going to give it a solid 8.
All right. Not bad. Robert, are you going to raise him or call him, or are you going to undercut him? Lowball him?
Well, we'll see about that, Daniel. I have similar feelings as Dirty on this one. It's a very entertaining revenge power fantasy film where and Dirty's right. I've definitely had this fantasy before where you are just the ultimate power, and that all the machinations of the state or whatever, be it the cops or the feds or whoever comes after you, you are just 10 steps ahead of them, and that all their efforts go to naught. That is definitely a power fantasy, because we are all essentially at the mercy of the state if the Eye of Sauron gets put upon you. Right? We are the absolute underdog. The individual is the ultimate underdog when you're dealing with these levers of power So if you get on their shit list, there's almost very little you can do. So this kind of revenge power fantasy is very appealing. Even though he ultimately becomes the villain, you're with him for a lot of it. And even towards the end, you can still kind of feel him, even though you don't think, you may disagree with his methods like I do, and you disagree that he's even accomplishing what he wants to accomplish, at least he claims to want to accomplish. It's still, fascinating to kind of think about and consider that, one person could be so dedicated. And it also is kind of a cautionary tale, right? Like, don't go around messing with people because you could run into somebody who has a certain set of skills. And be careful when you take everything from someone, because then they have nothing to lose and they become very, very dangerous. And this guy, combined with his certain set of skills, with nothing to lose and a whole lot of time on his hands to plot the ultimate revenge story. And granted, of course, it's a fantasy, but it's still terrifying, right? And it also is a cautionary tale for the revenge seeker, and whether or not you are okay with becoming the villain, becoming the monster in seeking your revenge. What is your revenge worth to you? It's a really interesting film, and it's above its pay grade. It's above his pedigree. Let me say it's sold as like a generic kind of action movie thriller kind of thing with Jerry Butler and Jamie Foxx doing whatever, kind of like a White House Down or whatever, some kind of generic thriller movie. But I think it's a little bit better than those. I think it's pretty damn well made, and even though it's got its little flaws, I could quibble here and there. I don't think Jerry Butler should have made that phone call at the very end when he realized that Jamie Foxx was in a cell. The jig was up, and he should have realized that if he was that smart. But overall, this is a lot of fun, and I'm gonna give it 7.5 exploding cell phones out of 10. Just a half a cell phone less than Dirty J. I think it's excellent. I don't think it's quite classic, but it's a lot of fun. Definitely worth your time.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that it's punching above its weight. Like, you expect this to be sort of a middle of the road action movie, and it's a little bit better than that. So I'll agree. I'll agree with that. And as I was mentioning earlier, I do like the premise of it. Like, he's been wronged and he wants to make a point. He wants to stand on some level of principle or have them confront the possibility that the system itself is the problem, or more, to put a more of a accurate point on it, I guess. Like I said earlier, he's not really saying that the system is necessarily bad, but maybe some of the incentives are bad and the people lose their way in it. And I think Nick has a quote where he's talking to the older prosecutor guy, and he's like, when I got into this, I was really just thinking about justice and doing good. And now that I'm kind of caught up in this game, I think that rather than me changing the system changed me. And that's what his kind of realization is by the end. And if that's all Gerard Butler was trying to do, was to get Jamie Foxx to like be a better lawyer, maybe he accomplished that. He did get his revenge on the people who wronged him the most. And then he also became a monster. Granted, he was already a monster doing the bidding of the federal government, apparently, with his ability to murder black bag people and shit like that. So maybe he didn't really have to become a monster. He already was a monster. But
right. It wasn't much of a shift for him. He was like, oh, this is just my normal Tuesday. Don't worry about it.
Right. And maybe he thought he had given that up after he retired or whatever, if that's what had happened. I forget if he had been retired. And that's when he got married and had the kid and all of those things. So maybe he thought this life was behind him. So it's sort of that Liam Neeson Taken thing where he's kind of like pulled back in and he's got a certain set of skills, as Robert was saying earlier, to get some revenge and payback and try to make some points. I think his points would have been, I don't know, better served had he not been as over the top and killing a lot of innocent or people who, you know, they're just caught up in the system as well. Like, I don't know what that was really proving to anybody. I guess there's consequences to your actions, which is one of the points he said he was trying to make. But
who's really gonna see that? They're just gonna see crazy person killing people. That's all they're gonna see. They're not gonna see. They're not gonna know this whole story. Like his entire plan requires everybody to know his exact motives and understand everything from his point of view as to why these people are bad actors. These people that he's killing are justified killings.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's going to see that. Not even the people getting killed or the friends of the people getting killed are going to definitely, who are really familiar with the story of what happened, are going to go, oh yeah, well, he definitely should have killed that person.
Right. And like, how would he know? I mean, I guess he could have kind of known that the judge is going to sign that warrant when she shouldn't have. And so then she gets that immediate, like, you know, payback for that. But how did he know that she was going to use the phone right then? Well, I guess he called the phone, but to arm it or whatever. But I mean, I don't know. It just didn't make sense. That was like a jump scare thing. I think that moment where she just did this bad thing and then immediate consequence.
I mean, unless he had a camera in the room or whatever with a microphone, I don't know. He's like basically God in this movie.
Right. Omnipotent. Yeah. He just knows everything, can see everything. He
did have some pretty crazy surveillance equipment that they found down in this tunnel.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. I did think that the bomb disposal robot with the 50 cal and the frickin' RPG was kind of dumb. It's like, that seemed just, I don't know, like it was like we were watching Short Circuit or something. Johnny Five out in the cemetery rolling around. But, you know, aside from that, I think that the movie was actually pretty good. So I'm going to give it 7 exploding cell phones. So pretty high marks all around for what should have been just kind of a run-of-the-mill action movie.
What did you guys think of him sending the videotape to the daughter? That seemed pretty messed up.
Well, he didn't send it to her directly, right? It was to the household or to...
Yeah, but he knew that there... No, because the guy that delivered it said it was what? Like a... I forget what he said. Like a recital DVD, right?
Well, I don't know if the guy said that. I think it was just... the little girl assumed that's what it was because they were expecting it.
Yeah, it was set up earlier that he was gonna not make it to the performance, but order the DVD. But I don't think 300 knew that was happening.
I would hope not.
Yeah, I think he just planned to send it to him, and whoever watched it. I don't know. It's one of those like, I don't think that was the intention of the plan.
I mean, it's possible though. You send a video to a household, and if it's not specifically addressed to a certain member of the household, anybody could watch it. I don't know. Yeah. It seemed kind of messed up to me, but maybe that was just on my first watching.
Yeah, he had to have at least assumed that the girl would see it because I mean, it's probably. He in order for him to set that up, he had to have known that there was this whole recital. He had to have known that Daddy's always away at work and can't come to the recitals. You know, it's like he's been watching these people for the past decade or so.
Oh, so yeah, like, he did.
He might not have intended for the little girl to open it up right away. I mean, his intention might have been like, oh, okay, maybe they'll, because like say the little girl actually listened to the mother and didn't watch it. You know, the mom was like, no, we're gonna wait till Daddy gets home to watch it. That might have actually been his intention. Was they're all sitting there as a family, and suddenly a chainsaw to this guy's leg and.
Right.
Just kind of ruined them all as a family instead of just, I think the little girls.
I'm not really clear on what his intent was to even send it to Jamie Foxx at all, though.
To get caught.
As a brag,
he could have sent that to just the cops.
Yeah.
If he was aiming to get caught, yeah, but I mean, he took every precaution there was not to get caught. Even after they saw it, they're like, "Oh, he's wearing a welding helmet," and we literally still have nothing on this guy. I'm pretty sure that was what was it after he sent the video? I'm pretty sure that it was after that the judge was like, "Oh well, let him go." And then he ruined it by being in contempt of court. I'm pretty sure that happened after the video.
Right.
Memory.
I guess sending it to Jamie Foxx's character makes it more personal because he felt betrayed by Jamie Foxx shooting the layup versus going for the Monster Jam.
Fair enough. I mean, we could nitpick, but overall, good movie.
Yeah, good choice. Good selection there, Ben.
Thank you.
Speaking of good selections, we don't have one for next week at this point. We were going to be doing Sound of Metal with Rocky Ferrenburg, but he might be delayed, so that could be a couple of weeks out. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to be doing Birdcage with James Jenneman of the Blackbird podcast. So next week, we're not sure exactly what we're going to do. Maybe Rocky will become available, and we will be doing Sound of Metal. But perhaps, Robert, you and I can just wildcard something, and we'll post it on one of our Facebook pages or some shit, and people can learn about it that way. But in 2 weeks, James Jenneman with Birdcage, that will be a lot of fun.
For sure. We've had him on before one time. I think it was a great episode.
Yeah, that was High Rise, the Tom Hiddleston flick. We had a really good conversation on that one, I think.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, buddy. So anyway, Ben, this has been a lot of fun. We'd love to have you back on. I think we're booked up through September at this point. So sometime in the fall, perhaps, you could troll us again, come up with something that you think Robert's just going to fucking hate, and we'll do it. Or it could be another one that's a bit of a gem, like this one. I think that this one has some merits and it's worth watching, and I'm glad that you suggested it.
Yeah. I mean, if I'll definitely try to come up with something else for down the road. I'll have to go through y'all's catalog again, make sure you didn't already do it. But that's actually how I selected this one. I'm just like going through every episode, and I'm like, that's weird. I could have sworn they did one on Law Abiding Citizen. I'm like, oh my god, they didn't. Hell, that was when I suggested it.
All right, yeah. Well, I actually did just update the listing, so. I had been about 6 weeks behind on that because, again, I'm lazy and behind on everything. But yeah, something in the fall we will be happy to do with you.
Absolutely.
All right. So, Robert, any final words for people, things they can do to support what we do here or make you happy, make you a happy man? Send suntan, baby tan, Hawaiian tropic your way, something like that.
Just because I look so good in a tan these days, you don't got to make fun of me, Daniel. It's just, I know you're jelly. Don't
Maybe
get too jelly.
Hula skirt and some coconut brassiere.
Maybe just a Hawaiian shirt. I can go full on boogaloo. Booyah. Boog. Yeah, you can support the show by leaving a review. That's a lot of fun. You can leave a like on a YouTube video. You could subscribe to the channel. You can just subscribe and download all the podcasts on all the devices. You can just over download it. I don't know does it count as another download if you download it, delete it, download it, delete it, download, delete it. You just keep doing that. Bump up those numbers. Those are rookie numbers. That's how you can support the channel. Get out somewhere in the summer. Go have a good time. Get outside, get after some life, get busy living, get busy dying. That's what you can do to support the podcast this week. Thanks for listening, everybody. We will be back next week with I don't know what, but it'll probably be a strong performance. That's all I can promise. We'll try our best. Always. It's always our best. And you can find the show notes more for this now best episode at lastnight.com/181. And we'll see you guys all next week for Mystery Movie Day. So we'll see you guys then, and say goodnight from last night, everyone. Peace out.